reading from Mark 4:35 to 41. Jesus calms the storm. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along, just as he was, in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." I've never been a big fan of boats, and my experience with them has been limited. Other than a couple of dolphin watch cruises off of the island, I've always avoided them. Friends of mine enjoy going on cruises, and I've been invited to join them, but the idea of being stuck on a boat or a ship, no matter how large and luxurious it may be, has never appealed to me. I think I'm afraid of the surrendering of control that it takes to be on a ship. After all, what if you want to get off? You're stuck in the middle of the ocean. The ship's captain is certainly not going to turn around and drop you off. I've also been invited to go on fishing expeditions locally in the bay and on the Arroyo, but again, the appeal of such an adventure eludes me. Too much sun, too much open water, and too many things that can go wrong. And besides, I don't like my fish to look like fish. I don't want to see it flopping around, and I especially don't want to see it looking at me with its glassy eyes, seemingly saying, "Why me? I never did anything to you." I want my fish to look like the menu board at Long John Silver's. They don't come that way. Jesus and his disciples were no stranger to boats or fishing. Quite often, Jesus is referred to as the fisher of men's souls, and at least 4 of the disciples were experienced fishermen and therefore experienced with boats. So the prospect of a night voyage across the Sea of Galilee must not have been very intimidating. However, it is important to note that by crossing Galilee, they are entering the land of the Gentiles. Now, we get our readings from the Revised Common Lectionary, which means that all over the country, churches are reading this same story this Sunday morning. It also means that someone, somewhere, has found a thematic link between the 4 scriptures we have read during today's service. Now, both the Psalm and the reading from Job mention storms and the ocean, but the section from 2 Corinthians doesn't. So what is the connection? Well, Jesus must have had a purpose in crossing the sea into the land of the Gentiles. And what would that purpose be if not to teach and preach to these very people who are outside of the religion he was born in and the tradition in which he was born? He is sending a message stating that his teachings are not just for the Jews. In 2 Corinthians verse 3, Paul writes, "We are putting no obstacles in anyone's way, so that no fault may be found in our ministry." I believe that is the connection. I had never noticed that verse before, and when I read it in preparing to speak to you today, it stood out to me as if it were written in bright letters of gold. We are reminded once again that Jesus' message and the salvation he offers are for everyone. How many churches put obstacles in the way of the worship of God? How many churches are there that carry out a faultless ministry? I think too many of them are too busy watching other people's boats when their own are leaky and full of holes. It is easy to imagine our lives as voyages across a sea full of both uncertainty and adventure. If your life were a boat, what would its name be? Would it be Titanic? Are you always running into icebergs? Or maybe the SS Minnow from Gilligan's Island? I mentioned to a friend that what I was writing about for today, and he suggested I call my boat the Queen Mary. which I'm not sure how I feel about. One thing that is certain is that all of our boats are going to run into rough and stormy seas. In the gospel for today, we see that despite everything they have seen so far, the apostles still have questions. Their boat is being tossed about by the wind and the waves, and through it all, Jesus sleeps calmly. They must have been asking each other, doesn't he care what is happening to us? They even wake him up and ask, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? How many times have we, in our own boats, lost at sea, caught up in a storm, asked God that very question? I know I have. It is easy when you are in the middle of some crisis or drama to question whether God is with you. It is easy to forget that we are a people of faith. When the wind of trouble and the waves of disaster are upon us, it is too easy to question God's plan for us, which is why the words Jesus speaks here are so important. When he awakens, he calms the wind and the waters with the words, Peace, be still. These words are more than a commandment to nature. I think they are some of the most important words of wisdom left to us in the Scriptures. I cannot tell you how many times I have tried to deal with a storm in my life by creating a storm of my own. Too many times I have seen a boat approaching my boat, and rather than charting a path away, I have aimed my boat straight at the other one, crying, Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. I have learned that you can't fight drama with drama, just as you can't fight a riptide. The way to survive is to stay calm, surrender to the current, and keep your head above water. And remember Jesus' words to the apostles. Why are you afraid? Have you no faith? You see, whatever storm may be trying to capsize and sink our boats, we are never alone. Jesus is always on board. We may think he doesn't care, and he may seem as if he is asleep, but he is always there for us. Part of his gift to us those many years ago when he earned us eternal salvation was the gift of faith. If our lives are a journey across the sea on a boat, then surely the life preservers are labeled faith. We just need to remember to put them on. We also need to remember that the gospel mentions that there were other boats on the water that night. Imagine how heartening it must be when you are out there on the sea to see others in the same struggle as you, to maybe see their lanterns swinging in the sails, to see that if your boat did sink, there were others around who would respond to your cries for help. Jesus wants us to have faith, not only in him, but in our fellow man. Now, a case appeared in the news this week, and I believe it illustrates this point. Many of you have probably seen the video that went viral this week about the school bus monitor who is being bullied. You know what I'm talking about? There is no other word for it. On a school bus by 4th, 7th, and 8th grade boys. She, Karen Klein, was taunted mercilessly for nearly 10 minutes. This happened in Greece, New York, by these boys who made comments about her appearance, her poverty, and her family. And they taped it on their phone. At one point they even said that her family had probably committed suicide just to get away from her. It is not known if the boys were aware that Karen's oldest son had committed suicide 10 years earlier. The video made its way onto YouTube earlier this week, I think on Tuesday or Wednesday, and in just a few days has been viewed over 5 million times and has become a national news story. A man in Toronto set up a web page which had a goal of raising $5,000 so Karen could have a vacation from her job, where she earns $15,000 a year. Instead of raising $5,000, the site has raised, in just a few days, over $600,000, and there are still 26 more days left to donate. I mention this because if you were judging humanity just by the 4 kids in the video, you would be left with a pretty sorry picture. You have to remember that over 20,000 people have made a gift of compassion to a complete stranger they haven't even met. Karen herself has declined to press charges against the kids and has chosen to keep her job, stating that not all kids are bad. The man who created the donation website didn't respond with anger. He didn't post his own video saying, you know, back in my day these kids would have been spanked and where are their parents and blah, 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 blah. He responded with compassion. And the compassion he responded with has been set forth as an example, was answered by thousands of people all over the world. Just as Jesus went to the land of the Gentiles to preach, crossing a stormy sea in a little boat, so is this church a lifeboat, offering hope and rescue for those who choose to board her. Our seas can be stormy, and sometimes we rock in the wake of the big ocean liner churches that pass us in our common waters, but we haven't sunk yet, nor will we because of our faith in God and Jesus. I am thrilled to be on this journey with you, and I couldn't ask for better shipmates.